In the exercise 6, we have two economies, home and foreign. Home is going to be capital abundance, so that means though it has capital and labor, the number of machines or capital per worker is higher in that economy than in the foreign economy. So that's why the foreign economy is labor abundant. Also, each of them is able to produce two goods, clothes, which is intensive in labor, while food use more capital per worker. Okay, so the question is about, well, it is economy is closed. Now the question is what's going on with the prices of these two economies when they decided to trade. So they're going to open the barrier to international trade. Let's assume that we have the same relative demand in each economy, so that's why we're going to be able to put both economies in just one graph. Because we are talking about prices, the graph that we need is the one in which we have prices here versus the quantity. Okay, so here we have, for instance, the relative price of food versus the relative quantity of food. It can be the relative price of food, or you can do it in the other way around, right? The relative price of clothes, and here it's going to be the relative quantity of clothes. So the relative demand, let's say, is something like this, always with this negative slope. So that means as higher is the price of something, lower is the quantity demanded. See it is here in both for this and for this variable. Okay, because we have that home is capital abundant, so that means it's going to produce more food than the other economy. And here we have the quantity of food. So that means that the relative supply of the home economy is going to be higher than for the foreign economy. The slope of the supply is positive, so in this way, and in the case of the home economy, which is capital abundant, that economy is going to have a relatively higher supply of food versus cloud. So it's going to be a place like this, for instance, relative supply. I'm going to use a different color for the foreign economy. Relative supply, I'm going to put the star because that is for the foreign economy. Let's see what's going on with these two economies are close. Well, the relative price of food in the foreign economy is going to be higher than in the home economy. And what about the quantity of equilibrium? The relative quantity produced of food in the home economy also is going to be higher than in the foreign economy. What's going on when these two economies decided to trade? Well, the thing is, people from this consumer from this foreign economy now are paying a relatively high price of food. So they are going to be really happy if that relative price is at least a little bit smaller. While producers of this home economy now are charging a lower price. So if they are able to increase a little bit the price of the food, they are going to be happier than before. So eventually, the thing that we are going to observe is that in each economy, the supply that they are going to face, the consumer of each economy, the supply that they are going to face respect to food versus clothes, is going to be different. In the home economy, the relative supply is not going to be this one. It's going to be a little bit smaller. Why is that? Because the producer now also they are going to supply their goods to the foreign economy. The producer of food now prefer to supply to those people because they are willing to pay even more than the home consumers. In that case, the home consumers are going to sacrifice themselves in terms that now, because they still want to buy food, they are going to pay a little bit more. What's going on with the supply of these goods in the foreign economy, relative supply of food? It's not going to be so smaller as before because now there are food that is coming from the other economy. So eventually the relative supply of food is going to be the same for both economies, and it's going to be in a place between these two. And that is going to be like the relative supply in international terms in each economy. So let's put, I don't know, for instance, the blue color. That is going to be the new relative supply for each economy. So the new relative price is going to be here. What's going on with respect to the foreign economy? Well, for the foreign economy, for those consumers, they are going to observe a lower relative price of food, or what is the same, a higher relative price of clothes. What's going on with the home consumers? They are going to face a bigger relative price of food, but also at the same time a relatively smaller relative price of clothes. And that is the result of what about the prices in an international trade context for each economy. Now, the consequence of these trade openings in terms of production is that, given the fact that the new relative price that is associated with the international relative price of food is higher than the initial relative price of food, this is for the home economy, we are going to observe that the ratio of prices is not going to be there. In fact, we can see that this value is going to be higher than this value, so it's going to be in a place where the slope is steeper. That place can be a place like, let me put a point like this. So if this is the PPF, that was the starting ratio of prices. Now the new one is going to be here, for instance. What is the thing that we are observing? If here, of course, here is the quantity of food. That's why here we have the relative price of food. So that means here is the quantity of clothes. So that was the starting point. So that was the initial production. We are over the PPF, so we are talking about just production, okay? So the initial production of food, it was here. The new production of food is here. So we are observing and increasing the production of food for the whole economy. The opposite is going to happen in the foreign economy. That foreign economy is going to produce less food. What's going on with the clothes? That was the starting point. So the initial value, 0 is here. So as far away you are from 0 because it's higher, now it's a little bit closer, the new quantity of clothes. So it's decreasing. So in terms of production or output, this economy is going to produce more food than before and less clothes than before. And finally, the next question is what's going on with the ratio of the weight to rental and the demand of labor per capita, given the fact that now the relative prices have changed. In fact, we know that the relative price of food has increased, so that is the same as that the relative price of clothes has decreased, okay? It's like, because this is higher, the new price of food, let's say, is that the reason of the change. The new price of food that is bigger, now the relative price of clothes is smaller. So let's start from a starting point and then let's see what's going on, okay? So because this is going to decrease, I'm going to take a high value and then it's going to be easier make the reduction of that value. Let me use a different color. I think it's better this one. So that was the initial ratio of weight over rental, so the cost of labor over the cost of capital. In the industry that was capital intense, that was the proportion or the demand of labor per capita. So I usually put always here labor over capital in all of them, but you can introduce just the opposite, okay? So that was then for the food sector, and this was for the clothes sector, okay? As we were saying, now this is going to decrease, so let's take a point like this. What is the thing that we are observing? Is that prices are decreasing, the relative price of clothes is decreasing, so that means that the relative weight or relative cost of labor is also decreasing. In this case, we are going to say that it's because the price of food is increasing, so that means it's like saying that the remuneration of capital now is higher than before. So it's for that reason. In fact, in general, this increase is going to be higher than this one, okay? So let's put the new values here. What is the thing that we are going to observe? So we are going to observe that now in the food manufacturing, the use of labor now, or the demand of labor per capital, per machine, is going to be higher. How is that? Because now it's more expensive than before the use of capital. And the same thing is going to happen with the other production, with the other industry. That is going to use more labor per capita than before. In general, the winners are going to be the capital owners, while the losers are going to be the labor owners. One thing that I didn't say. So though the price of food is the one that is changed, so that good which use labor and capital, the price of that good now is higher. The thing is, though here we have also workers, these workers also are going to be worse off in the same way as these workers, right? And the owner of capital, here also in growth we have the owner of capital. But even in that sector where prices are constant, they are going to make more money, okay? Because the remuneration across production factors, so given one production factor, it doesn't matter the industry in which that production factor is allocated, the remuneration is going to be the same. The difference is coming from different production factors. So, in general, we should expect that in this case, the owner of capital, it doesn't matter if they are working in the cloth industry or in the food industry, they are going to be better off. While the owner of labor, the workers, are going to be worse off. It doesn't matter, as I said, if they are working in the cloth industry or in the food industry. Okay? Because when they observing differences in wages, they are going to change the industry. Given the fact that the marginal productivity is not constant, that is the thing that is going to make them more productive, and then their wages are going to be higher. So if we have many workers that now are going to this industry, because in this industry they are going to be like more scarce, they are going to be more productive. In fact, that industry, they are going to pay them more in order to have workers, because that industry also needs workers. So eventually, wages are going to be the same across the industry, and the rental is the same thing, right? Now we are going to do the exercise 8, given the fact that the exercise 7 is very similar to exercise 6. So here we have one economy that can produce clothes or food. For the production of clothes, that industry is labor intensive, while the food one is capital intensive. Here we have the initial PPF, here is the production of food, here is the quantity produced of clothes, and now we know that for any reason the amount of labor now is higher. Imagine that it's like many people is coming from abroad, okay? What is going to be the result? More labor, at the end of the day, is more input, so it's a production factor. So that means in both industries, which both use labor as they use also capital, both of them, now they are going to be able to produce more, okay? But with one of them is going to be able to produce even more. Which one? The one that is labor intense. So that is going to be the production of clothes. So though we are going to observe that the whole curve is going to move upward and also to the right side, this increase, for the case of the good that is intense in the use of labor, that is going to be higher. So that is going to be for the strain cases, but also for all of the combinations that are between these two strain cases. So in general, we are going to observe that now the production of clothes is much higher. It can be much, because this is possibility, it can be much higher than the food. Take care that food is here, so more production is moved to the right side, while here the vertical is closed, so more production is more upward. Okay? So here we are going to have the new PPF, given these new inputs of labor. Now the exercise 9 continue with the previous one. That's why I give this graph. In fact, the answer I have to tell is the answer D. So the thing is, okay, then given the fact that the relative prices is not changed, it's the same, what is going to be then the production? So we know that if the relative price is the same, so also that means that the ratio of here we have food. Food was capital intensive, so let's put just the ratio of rental to weight is going to be constant, so it's not going to change. Also, this means if this doesn't mean, or if this doesn't change, this also means that the use of capital per worker in each industry is going to be the same. Okay, so the proportion is the same. If this was 2 for instance, clothes sector, so that means I use too much per worker, that is going to be 2 in this context, okay? So this is not going to change. If this was for the clothes, and if for the food it was, let's say, 5, because it's capital intensive, that means each worker used 5 machines, that also is not going to change. So what is going to be the result? Graphically, this involved, the thing that the relative prices didn't change, involved that this slope is going to be the same as this one. Doesn't change. So it's going to be, we just need to find a point in which it's going to be parallel. So for instance, something like this. So this number, this slope is the same in both places. So now the production of food is smaller, while the production of clothes is bigger. In fact, we already know that this was going to be the result. Why is that? Because here the thing that we have is the increase of one production factor. In this case, it's labor. In the chapter, you have the opposite example that was with capital. Here is labor. That means that now we have more workers. One of the industry is labor intensive, so that means that the most efficient way of using that labor is using that new labor here. But at the same time, when you use more labor, because you also use capital, you need to incorporate some capital. But the amount of capital is fixed, didn't change. Then how is the way of introducing more capital here? Because you are taking capital from the other industry. But at the same time, when you're taking capital from this industry, also you're going to take part of the labor. Because in that industry, when you are taking capital, that labor doesn't serve. So eventually you're going to have a bigger production of clothes, which is the industry linked to labor more intensively. So you're going to produce more clothes, and at the same time you're going to produce more food. Why is that? Because you are taking from this industry both capital and also labor, part of the labor. Where that industry is getting a lot of labor coming from outside, or what the new stock of labor that is coming, and also from the other industry, and additionally you are taking part of capital of that industry. So that's why A is the answer. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to do by yourself the exercise 10, and that's all.